Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on Rotogrinders.com. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, aka hopefully on top of you on the GPP leaderboards. Not last week though. I'm joined by Stuart Gibson of Advanced Sports Analytics. I'm assuming, Stuart, that I wanted to ask if does correlation and leverage matter when like all the value just smashes and it doesn't, and just like who cares? Like last week, like if you were owned and you were good value, like it didn't matter if it didn't correlate or you were leveraged off of anything. I did well in cash games, but obviously most of my GPP lineups got absolutely dusted. So is this the type of week that we come off of where people get like the confirmation bias that, oh, all I have to do is like play the 8 value one-offs and don't worry about correlation?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done any research specifically like following a, just massive chalk hit week, but yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's a reasonable assumption. Yeah, I mean, definitely in a week where all the chalk hits and it's all just insane value, playing like a correlated lineup or a leveraged lineup kind of has less value, and it's really just like having the right combination of pieces in your lineup, regardless of kind of how things correlate. So yeah, it's tough.
Well, we can't predict those things. Like my attitude when it comes to the two, at least if you even want to say just a one NFL season, like I view my DFS game from multiple years, but you have 17 weeks. Maybe you'll get one of these weeks, but like it's not like we're seeing that 10 times a season. So since I can't predict the weeks that like all the chalk smashes all at once, I'm just going to play correlation and leverage. I'm going to play my game stacks, my secondary correlations, and benefit from the times that certain chalk busts. Maybe certain chalk doesn't, but it's not going to be the days where like all of them do well. And just I look at the lineups that win that probably have to score a lot of points because a lot of people have those players, and just say there's no way I would have ever get into those lineups because essentially it's like cash plus type lineups, and I just make money in cash games. So it's like, okay, I'm perfectly fine with that, making money in cash or making money in single entry. Like if you play on FanDuel, we have the single entry series on Rotogrinders, right? You could go there. It's still going on. Even if you missed out on the first 2 weeks, it's for week 6 through 13. So you missed the first 2, but it doesn't matter. There's single entry contests in 3 buy-ins, $5, $33, $100, but the top 4 combined scores count within each tier. So as long as you put 4 good weeks together, you could advance to be one of the top 2 finishers and in each tier, and you advance to a 6-man $20,000 final. That's the FanDuel single entry series. Go over on FanDuel, enter them $5, $3, $100. So for all sizes of bankroll, you're not too late. Do it now. So Stuart, this slate, if you're taking a look at it, it feels like this feels like the night and day. Like this is the slate. Week 8, not all the other weeks are like week 8. And we take a look, and especially with the bye weeks, I like the disgusting slates. Stuart, do you like disgustingness?
I mean, look, I try to play whatever's on, but yeah, I mean, it definitely force you to make some uncomfortable decisions. I think be willing to take some stances on games that in a really great slate you would just never even consider. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely forced to entertain the idea of some disgusting games and stacks, which I think is fun because I don't know. It's not like there are no appealing games. There's maybe a couple, and you have to imagine ownership is going to condense a decent bit around those games, and I think it should open up some opportunities to get access to some of these games that at first glance seem a little less appealing. But I think there's enough to work with on this slate where yeah, we can try to find something to work with for the weekend.
Okay, so I think the biggest strategic point on this slate from an overall standpoint is the weather. Okay, I've already listened to some shows. Many people are not not talking about it. So like I have to gauge. Like I'm the type of person that plays like the ownership game. I need to know what other people are going to do. That's why I don't make my lineups until Saturday. And we have multiple games with potential weather situations. And when I say weather, I mean wind, not necessarily rain or snow. Uh, that will either lead people away from the games or people will just disregard the weather and play them as if it's, a sunny 72-degree day. From your research, how much, because we see like the totals in some of these games have come down like 4 or 5 points since they've opened, but some of them are still 50, right? Like we have the Packers Vikings game opened at 55.5. It's down to 51, but it's still one of the highest total games. So in your research, uh, do people overestimate the impact on wind on offensive production, or do they underestimate it?
I mean, we haven't really studied the impact relative to how, like impact on performance relative to how it affects ownership. So don't have a great sense of if there's over underestimation by the field. But yeah, I mean, our models would suggest that wind is really the key weather element to keep an eye on. Rain or humidity, probably less so. And low temps as well can like really, really low temps. That doesn't seem to be the issue with weather this week, mostly wind and precipitation related. But yeah, I mean, I think paying mostly attention to the wind is probably the way to focus. I don't know. I do think like people react to weather, and it will drive ownership up or down. And I think some of that ownership suppression is warranted, but perhaps there is a bit of an overreaction. Um, so
Because
I don't.
you'd have to think that it affects, like it has to be a negative impact at a certain level. Because I know Kevin Roth, he does our weather report here on Rotogrinders, and he'll update it throughout the week. Like we'll get a more updated forecast on Sunday morning, because that's what matters. What happened? I mean, no offense against Roth, but the weather guy is wrong half the time, 3 or 4 days out, without knowing exactly what it's going to be like at the precise stadium. Because it may be even the metro area, but there's different weather in those sectors that definitely go to rotogrinders.com, go to the weather report in the morning on Sunday, just to see if there's any dramatic changes where maybe the wind isn't as bad, or maybe it's a hurricane. But you would have to think that it would negatively impact the passing offenses and positively impact the running attack. And I'm saying this not as like a binary thing, that when we play DFS, a lot of times we're not trying to predict like what should happen, but we're trying to predict what the coaches think should happen. So if there's a lot of wind, that may not necessarily affect the passing game, but maybe the play calling is just they go extremely run heavy because the coach is afraid of it. So you can't just go by like, well, this is what they should be doing. Well, like go in the mind of some of these coaches, and we could see with a lot of the play calling they already do in the NFL that they're not necessarily playing optimal. That I don't think you should assume that the running backs, they're going to run the ball 35 times because it's 25-mile-an-hour winds. Because if they're down by 2 touchdowns, like they're probably not running the ball anyway. I mean, I think that the game state still matters more. Oh, the Jets go down. I know there's no weather there, but they're a 19.5-point underdog. I know it's Adam Gase. I'm making a very bad example because Adam Gase will be down 4 touchdowns and still running the ball. But I think I just wanted to highlight the fact that that's why the correlation between like, does the running backs do better or does the passing attacks do worse is very dependent on the game state and how the coach perceives the conditions.
Yeah. And yeah, and like I'm not necessarily sure that offenses going over committing to the run is like way, better for running backs. Cause I mean, running backs are heavily dependent upon scoring touchdowns. So, I think we've, the analytics community has come to an agreement that like passing is more efficient of a, point scoring, uh, strategy. So like if teams are running the ball a bunch and not putting their offenses in positions to score touchdowns, uh, even though the running backs getting more volume, they're getting kind of lower quality looks and touches. That adversely affects running backs as well. So
Because you also get stacked boxes. Like if the other team notices that you're just going to run it down their throat, they'll put 8, 9 guys in the box and just, okay, great. You had the running back that got 28 carries for 70 yards. Like it didn't, with no touchdowns. So you're sitting there with 7 points going, well, I thought they would run more. It's like, well, they did run more, just that they were absurdly inefficient in doing so.
yeah, and I think paying it from the receiving side, paying attention to kind of the routes that receivers tend to run could be valuable. Like I'm looking at this Las Vegas Cleveland game, terrible weather, right? Like you would figure high winds would more adversely affect a guy like Henry Ruggs than it would a guy like Darren Waller. Like Waller is working close to the line of scrimmage, not getting too many looks like way downfield, as where Ruggs is kind of the opposite. Again, I don't have any quantitative research on that, but I think intuitively, that's something maybe to consider. What type of routes do these players run? Wind I think has probably a disproportionate effect on downfield throws compared to more close to the line of scrimmage throws. So something.
But on the opposite end, I'm always going to argue on the opposite end.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's descriptive. Like what you're saying is a descriptive element of what routes they have run. But let's say, for instance, that Gruden goes, well, we're not going to be able to throw far downfield in the wind, so I'm going to have Ruggs run short routes and give him yak. Like maybe we could beat the team. Like they don't run 25 yards down the cart's not getting it to you there. So we're going to have we're going to have screen passes to you that you may not have seen all season, but you see in this game because he has reacted to the weather conditions. Maybe he doesn't react to the weather conditions. Maybe it's the same game plan. But I think you play this game of chicken by trying to look inside the mind and what should they do, what you think they should do. And a lot of times if you were to feasibly back test it, you'd be right half the time and wrong half the time. So like
Mhm.
if it comes out to you just flipping a coin, like how much thought should I be spending hours upon hours thinking about these things? I'd much rather just look at the game environments and go like Ruggs could get there maybe on 3 yak passes, short passes, and he takes it to the house. And people are like, and you get the ownership discount on it because people are like, well, I can't play Ruggs because how is Carr going to throw in 30-mile-an-hour winds 30 yards down the field? And then I get him he should be 12% owned, and I get him at 4%.
Yeah. And I think also a good, just like rule of thumb is just like pay attention to, Vegas, right? Like, Vegas lines are moving relative to weather, and I'd say closing lines are pretty darn efficient. So, I think that's just like a good and,
Yeah, but all these win games, we have 2 of them that are still over a 50. So we're not talking about games that have been bet down to the garbage level. So
mhm.
we're still looking at 50. Like that's what we do on the show. We look at the games that are most likely, highest probability to have the highest scoring teams, stacking them, game stacking, secondary correlations. So
Yeah.
like starting off, the highest total on the game on the slate is a non-weather, is not related to any whatsoever. It's the Niners versus the Seahawks, 54 total. The spread, Seahawks favored by 3. The running back situation in this game is who knows, right? I think Carson's going to be out. Hyde is nursing a hamstring, and Homer may be out, and DJ Dallas may end up as the only running back on the roster, and then he becomes chalk. And then on the other side, Wilson got injured, and then McKinnon apparently didn't play much last week. But then Coleman may come back, and then you got Hasty there. Who knows? But all we have to know is that Samuel is out. Kittle, Ayuk, Bourne, and then obviously Lockett, Metcalf on the other side. I would assume that these two teams rate high in likelihood to score the most points. And I like the fact that once you remove some of these receiving pieces, and if it ends up being a mess at running back, where there's multiple of them active, that I think the passing like 2+1, 3+1 in this game is extremely correlated.
Yeah, I mean, with Seattle, we talk a lot about the correlation, and that's that's there, and that's I think a really great element or component of that side of this game. My fear is that like I was quite high on Seattle last week when they had I think we had them as like a 10 maybe above 10% chance of scoring the most points on the slate, and we only have them at 7.5% probability this week. It's an expensive stack. It's I would guess going to be a pretty popular game and team to stack. So while the ceiling of the Seattle side is there, the correlation is there. There are some kind of marks against them, at least for me, relative to prior weeks where they don't have quite as high of a probability of scoring the most points on the slate. And I think ownership is just going to be real high on them, and it's kind of a lot to pay.
But it's not based on our current ownership projections on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
The highest owned guys from this game are Lockett, Kittle, Bourne as a cheap receiver. But that cheap receiver ownership this week may be flipped. Who knows? That's very hard to predict because we got Allen Robinson maybe out, so Mooney's available. Denzel Mims is at that price. We got Amendola even. Like we got a lot of these 3K guys that I don't know where it's going to go. But Lockett at 17%, Kittle at 11%. They're obviously the most correlated to Garoppolo or Wilson. But like Ayuk 10%, 9.8, Metcalf 11, like they're owned, but I think the current ownership is based on I'm going to bring it up. I may be over bringing it up, but the ownership of the weather games. So like I look like naturally last week, of course I X'd out the Seahawks Cardinals game, and that obviously didn't do well for me in GPP. I'm more likely to load up on this game the more that I feel that other people are playing the win games. But if I see that so many people are getting off the win games, like obviously this ownership is going to go up on Seattle, San Francisco. Garoppolo's a vomit quarterback, right? Well, I love the vomit stacks, but I don't necessarily like playing vomit stacks when they're chalk. So to me, like I think you're going by the notion that this is a very appealing stack, and I if it weren't for the if the other games didn't have wind, I'd agree with this ownership. I'd say I actually think it's too low. I would rather go over on this, but my fear is that the ownership may come here if people start getting off the other games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just like Lockett hasn't been owned at lower than 14% in the Millie Maker all season, and that's with you know far more competitive, I guess, Sunday slates than this Sunday.
But you're missing context, Stuart. You know who the chalk's going to be on this slate? Keenan Allen at 6,200 and Devontae Adams at 8,800. How do you play Tyler Lockett? Like that? That's. I'm looking at it from like, how do you?
I was saying Metcalf.
How does that happen?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. What did you guys have Metcalf projected at ownership wise?
Currently, right now, about 11.
All right. I mean, that would be. I guess you're expecting that people are really shying away from him following kind of a weak primetime showing, and I guess you're just saying pricing as well, like on receivers around him.
Right. Yeah. It's really just the pricing around the receivers is that Keenan Allen's going to suck up ownership at the 6K level. And if people are going to pay up, I mean, I know 8,800 is a lot more than these receiver prices, but they're going to pay for Devontae Adams. And like, how do you build a line? Then you have you really don't have any cheap running backs currently that you'd be playing. So you're most likely paying probably 6K per running back. Like these 7K level, like the Kittle, like obviously Kittle at a weak tight end position will get owned, but like it's from a lineup construction perspective, as long as the ownership is spread out on the games that have potential weather issues, really, considerations, that I think this is about accurate, and I really think their chance of success is higher than this. And I mean, typically this is the type of game that I would fade. I mean, like it's a highly correlated game. So it's like either you play it or you don't play it. So like I'm currently on the side of playing it, but by Saturday, I could be on the side of Xing this game out. Just that these Seahawks games are always number one, they end up, who knows what's happening in them. They could be 3-0 at the first quarter and then 42-28 by the third. So I'm more likely with the correlative elements in this game to see what the field does and then do the opposite of it.
Okay. So let's say, I mean, that you're projecting high ownership for this game and you want to, have a strategy for essentially not having much of this game. I mean, are you saying you want to exit out completely and just not have any pieces, or are there historically Carson would be a compelling guy as far as kind of getting negative correlation. He has kind of neutral correlation with the passing game, but I still think would be good leverage from like an ownership standpoint if he was playing, but it does seem like he's unlikely to play. I mean, do you have much confidence in a guy like Homer or Dallas if they play as a decent leverage option?
Well, the more that these guys are out, the more they're going to gain ownership. If DJ Dallas is the only running back on the roster, like he's going to be the highest owned running back on the slate. So like I get it. I'm talking about if Coleman comes back and now you have Coleman, McKinnon, and Hasty, like how do I play any of those guys with any confidence? I mean, you can. They're negatively correlated to the stack, but the concern is with the one-offs and the secondary correlations. Like Jimmy G is cheap enough. Like he's 5,400. So like, how do I can I play Kittle and Lockett as a secondary, or Ayuk and Metcalf or something? Like if they hit their ceilings, wouldn't it make it so much more likely that Jimmy G at 5,400 has busted his, he's put up 30 points for 5,400, and I can't get the production out of that price level.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like a tough game to get kind of pieces of without getting the whole game. I think San Francisco side, there's worse kind of quarterback to receiver correlation there. So I'd feel decent about going like Kittle without Garoppolo or Ayuk or Bourne without Garoppolo. It's the Seattle side that, like, if Lockett or Metcalf has a big game, it probably means that Wilson's going to have a big game. So that's a side I think that's tough to get secondary pieces of, but still beat, lineups who have those pieces plus Wilson. Yeah, I think it's gonna be tough with that Seattle side.
Right, and I think the Garoppolo ownership, if we just go by the quarterback, because I don't necessarily consider quarterback ownership all that much
Mhm.
in large field GPPs, but I think Garoppolo's ownership is going to depend a lot about Derek Carr's ownership, and we'll get to that game. So
Yep.
so the next game on the docket, Tennessee at Cincinnati. The Titans are favored by now 5.5. It's a 53.5 total. Titans have the second highest implied team total at 29.5. They're I mean, even though Corey Davis is back, the production on the Titans is fairly condensed. Cincinnati, obviously, we don't know if Mixon is going to be back, but we still have Bernard there, and their passing game is pretty. It's Burrow and the three receivers, pretty much. So with the condensed offenses here, what do you see as far as it is one of the high? It's the second highest total on the board. The probability of these teams. I'm assuming Titans more than so than the Bengals, but the thing with the Titans is that I feel like do I either just play Henry or I play Tannehill Brown and then run it back with someone. So and on the Bengals, like especially like Mixon's in, like Like I could play skinny. It seems like with Burrow, I could make more combinations with Burrow than I can with the Titans. So what do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati side is kind of actually. I mean, we have a very small sample on kind of Burrow and Higgins and Boyd with those two guys, but I mean, Cincinnati is so far out correlating Seattle. Like they're looking like kind of the new uh, Seahawks in a way. I mean, their correlation is insane. Let's see, I have the average correlation between those three guys, Burrow, Boyd, Higgins, at 0.56. I'm sorry, 0.49. There's really high correlation between a quarterback, a pair of receivers, and then those two receivers against one another. Their prices come up a bit, but I'm not really sure that it's come up quite enough. The Tennessee side, I think those receivers that you mentioned, Brown and Davis, are as well as Tannehill, like well priced given their likelihood of scoring the most points. We have them as a 10% probability of scoring the most points on the slate, and combined that three-player stack is 18.8K versus Seattle at a 7.5% chance of scoring the most at 22.4. So I mean, just in terms of kind of the price sensitivity of that stack, I do like Tennessee in that regard. There's pretty good correlation between Tannehill, Brown, and Davis. Average correlation of 0.279, pretty good for a double stack. I do have a little bit concerns about kind of the ceiling of this group. Davis in particular hasn't shown a huge ceiling, and I do think there are some ownership concerns, like Tannehill. Really, all three of them like haven't garnered excessive ownership, except for maybe that one Brown week recently. But it also hasn't been super low, as where Cincinnati, I mean, so far this year has gone, largely underowned. I do wonder if that arrow is trending up as they kind of continue to perform. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can go with this game from on either side. The passing attacks, I think, are both pretty reasonably priced. The concern is Derrick Henry. Obviously, he has the potential to just really nuke a lot of pieces in this game. I think as of now, this game is on the Roth report showing up as somewhat iffy. It certainly hasn't affected the total so far, but might show an impact as we kind of near Sunday, and if those weather trends continue. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to like with this game. You could go with the passing side. I think there are good correlation and kind of value properties of the passing attacks. I think there's also a case to be made for Henry. Like he's just excellent leverage against some of these passing pieces.
Well,
I don't know.
really, it's the opposite way around, Stuart. Henry is actually coming in as one of the highest owned running backs projected.
Okay.
And the receivers are not low owned, but really, I think it's the opposite way as far as getting leverage. I think more people will be playing Henry than will be playing AJ Brown, because AJ Brown is 6,900 on DraftKings. So the pricing matters, because remember, we got Keenan Allen, Chalk, 6,200.
Yeah.
Adams, 8,800. He'll be owned. We got the Seattle receivers at 7,100. Block at 7,100. So, like, where does AJ Brown fit into this? And I think people see the Titans still as a team that is slow, and if they could give it to Henry 27 times, they will, and maybe they do on Sunday. But I think it's much more likely. Like, can you see playing like Henry with any of his teammates together, unless you get that perfect, like when he broke the slate before, that he got there on like two big plays and the Titans were down 3 touchdowns that game. So like I kind of have to throw that out.
Yeah. I think you could go, Henry with some of the Cincinnati pieces. But yeah, I mean, if you say Henry's going to be, I'm saying Henry is good leverage against the way I'm thinking about it, because I have like 3 stars next to Cincinnati and 2 next to Tennessee. So, but maybe that's not necessarily how the field is likely to see it. If you think that Henry's going to be kind of the most popular piece in this game, then man, I mean, I do really like this game from a receiving. The receiving pieces are really interesting, and you could go Burrow, you could go Cincinnati or Tennessee side. I mean, I think both seem like good, receiving, trios to target. Yeah, I'm interested in this game, and probably will have a good share of lineups that include receiving and quarterback pieces from this game, and just kind of try to mix it around and see if I can get kind of the right combo on this game.
Right, and I think that the longer and longer that we don't know about Mixon, the more and more I want to play him if he happens to play.
Gotcha. I'm working on the assumption he's not going to play. I mean, he hasn't practiced, I think, all week. Not
Well, I'm
sure
just saying in case he does. We don't know. I mean,
for
I,
sure.
I'm planning right now on Thursday that Bernard's going to be in, and he's 5,800, and maybe I play him. But like I said, I don't build my lineups until Saturday. I want to see Friday practice report, Saturday practice report. I want to think about ownership. Right, you're thinking more about the correlations now, which is great to do. That's what this show is all about. But I'm sitting here with initial ownership projections going, like look at last week. They flipped on its head with the news that came out on Thursday and Friday after our show that like we could just give you the options and now you have to decide like how that ownership change affects your strategy.
Yeah.
So now the next two on the docket. We're getting to the win games. Okay, we got the Cleveland Browns, the Las Vegas Raiders in Cleveland. That game was opened at 55.5. It's now down to 51.5. The Browns are favored by 2.5 with a 27 implied team total. It looks like based on what I could see in projections, if I could bring this up, that Kareem Hunt stands to figure to be one of, if not the highest owned players on the slate as a whole, at 6,900 on DraftKings at running back. Jacobs expects to get a decent amount of ownership on the other side at 24% owned. Waller stands to be the highest owned tight end at 3,600. Harrison Bryant put up a 2-touchdown game last week with Hooper out again. He stands to figure to get ownership 12% at 3,200 at tight end. And obviously, people may go to Landry at 5,600 with OBJ out, or take their shot on a Rashad Higgins at 4,200, and he's getting like 9% ownership. I'm looking at these numbers as if like, do you realize that this game could go significantly under if the weather? I mean, because we have Derek Carr possibly could end up being the highest owned quarterback because he's cheap. Based on your probabilities that you have in front of you about this game, which doesn't necessarily take into account the weather per se. Am I nuts to say that if the ownership was at if the ownership stays at these levels, that there are more paths for this to fail than is worth owning them?
Yeah, I'm having kind of mixed feelings about this game because Cleveland does project as a decent probability of scoring the most points on the slate. They're fifth at 6.6%, and like both sides are, I think, priced pretty well. Cleveland doesn't have great correlation on their side. Las Vegas slightly better, but I think you're right. I mean, there are paths to failure for this game, and both teams just have like really, really limited ceilings. Like it just seems unlikely that a Cleveland stack or a Carr Las Vegas stack is going to just totally burn you. I mean, these aside from Waller, like none of these guys have really shown a reasonably high ceiling in the last year and a half or so. And yeah, I mean the pricing seems decent. Historically, these teams haven't been super owned, but I do think that is probably likely to change this week, just given, like you said, the context at tight end. There's a lot of vacated targets in Cleveland that I think will bump up ownership on guys like Landry and Hunt and Bryant. Um, At first glance, I kind of was interested in this game, but I am concerned by just the low ceiling for guys on the Cleveland side, which is projecting as like a decent total. But yeah, there's just not much of a ceiling on this side. I feel like I would rather take a shot on like Tennessee or Cincinnati or even Seattle. It's expensive, but they just have an insane ceiling, and there's really not much of that on either side of this game. So
Right. I think Hunt and Jacobs rate out well median wise. Like I think a lot of guys in this game rate out well median wise. Waller, even Landry at 5,600. Yeah, can you get 16 points out of him? Okay. Like I see that in this game. I see, and obviously for the Raiders, guys like Ruggs and Aguilar and even Witten. I mean, he could steal a touchdown from someone. And then we also don't know what the Browns are necessarily going to do with the secondary wide receivers. I mean, it could be Higgins, it could be Peoples Jones. We'll get Kadarrell Hodge is coming off the IR. Who knows what his role is going to be as a third receiver? That I think the ambiguity is much higher in this game than the field is going to realize.
mhm.
And even if this game does go off, I mean, in comparative to the slate, remember, this slate is much different than the past ones where we have like high scoring teams and 7 games over 50. Like, I think people are attracted to this game because compared to Seattle, this game is cheaper, right? Compared to the Packers, this game is cheaper. So there are more ways to go 3+1, game stacky type of things in this game. And it just happens to be the best of the bunch when it comes to a high total. But to me, if this is going to sit at 51 and a half and maybe even get even lower, like it's not that there are a couple games that you could, that may only be a 3 or 4 point difference. That will be like half is owned. That don't go with don't go with these pieces. But like I said, I'm gonna say my disclaimer that if by Saturday people are viewing it the same way that I am, and they start jumping off this game, and I see like Derek Carr and Waller and Ruggs, and that comes in way too low, then of course then I'm gonna jump all. It's like the stock market. It's like I'll do whatever way the market's going that is inefficient. I'm gonna just jump on. But I do agree that Stuart with the great point that I think these all make good median plays. If you play these guys in your cash lineup, I think that's if you're playing smaller single entry maybe and you want to use some one offs, I think the value is good. Just ceiling for large field GPP, I think is suspect.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a little more ceiling on the Las Vegas side. Like, Waller can approach 30 points. Ruggs hasn't shown a huge ceiling yet, but the skill profile would suggest that he could be capable of big game. But it's just like, all right, like let's just say Landry is the wide receiver one and kind of carries that role. Like, what is his action? I feel like I can't really see him scoring more than like I don't know, 23 points or something like that, which, don't get me wrong, like 23 is good, but as far as like just a huge ceiling performance, I mean, I'm just a little concerned, especially on the Cleveland side, about some of the ceiling of these players. And I don't know, maybe you could take kind of like a secondary correlation of like Hunt versus Waller, Hunt versus Ruggs, but doesn't really feel like a game I'm too interested in loading up on.
Well, here's a game. If we talk about ceilings, this game is probably has the players that have the highest ceilings, most condensed offenses, especially, with the injuries or whatever now. We got the Vikings at the Packers, 51 total. It opened at 55 and a half. Green Bay is favored by 7. Green Bay has a 29 implied total. Vikings with a 22. And obviously on these teams, like if Dalvin Cook's back, we're going to have to know what the status of Aaron Jones is. Jamal Williams was priced up now to 6,100. Aaron, you got obviously Devontae Adams. He was priced up to 8,800. Obviously, MVS is sitting there doing wince or whatever he does. Lazard is in practice. Maybe he's back. Maybe he's active and doesn't play that much, but that still takes away a little bit. Then obviously on the Vikings side, it's essentially Cook, Thielen, Jefferson, and then Irv Smith if you want to punt at tight end or something. He's been getting some targets per game. Probably not the greatest of ceilings, but if you need a good shot at 8 points at tight end, I don't think that's that bad. But this is one of those games. Rolf has it as red currently, as downfield passing games, high wind, and we're seeing ownership towards it. Because if it wasn't, if this was the opposite, and this was in Minnesota in the dome, like this would be skinny stack central, right? I would be out at the strip club with this, with my skinny stacks, doing dances, because it makes perfect sense with the Rodgers, Adams, Jefferson, or Cousins, Thielen, Adams, Williams. Like that, there's only so many pieces in this game, but it's getting ownership. So, like, how did this game rate? I'm assuming Green Bay has to be high in your model to score the most points, but I'm concerned on how they do that.
Yeah, I mean they're second highest behind Kansas City. They're actually in I rounded to the, I guess, third decimal place. They're in kind of a tie with Tennessee. Man, I'd love to see Aaron Jones play and play some Aaron Jones. Like I think the consensus probably. I mean, even though Adams' price has come up, like I could see Adams still, Adams Rodgers being a pretty popular stack, and I mean Jones just never seems to garner the ownership that his ceiling would seem to warrant. And I mean we'll see if he does. It's hard to say, like that's kind of the flag, or the hill I want to die on, with Jones not even confirmed in. But if he were in, I mean I think that would just be a great leverage spot.
Well, no, sir. I mean, I think I agree with you. I think the longer we don't know, the more that I will roster Aaron Jones if the news comes out. Like if the news comes out like with a Schefter tweet on Saturday night, like I'm on board, because the field doesn't react quick enough. Like if we get the news today on Thursday that Aaron Jones is going to be active, like we may not know. Hey, it could be one of those things where he's active and only plays 20% of the snaps. I mean, we have to fall into that fact. But the earlier it happens, the more that people get to prepare for that. But I'm absolutely with you. I think if Aaron Jones is in, I think that takes away some value from Devontae Adams, and it is currently elevated price at 8,800. Yeah, I think I could easily find leverage there.
Yeah, and I mean we just saw Jamal Williams have such a great game, and kind of the concern with Jones, like I think the reason his ownership is typically low is because people are always like, what about Jamal Williams? What about Jamal Williams? And I don't know, just setting up for, I think, a good spot. And if weather is a factor, and Jones plays, like I just think it could be a great spot for Jones, and good leverage. I mean, darn, you nailed last time Minnesota, like the Jefferson play as leverage. I think kind of the perceived gap between Thielen and Jefferson is shrinking, and perhaps, I don't know what people are perceiving, but certainly in the last few weeks, it's Jefferson has been the guy. We don't have Minnesota projecting as a super high likelihood to put up a top score on the slate, and they are, as kind of a unit, Cousins, Thielen, Jefferson, priced pretty expensively relative to their likelihood of scoring the most points. But I think in reality, I mean, you would never really consider playing Jefferson and Thielen in the same lineup. But nonetheless, it does feel like a kind of low total relative to the price tag to get too excited about, skinny stacking on the Minnesota side. Um, I don't know. To me, man, I really hope Jones plays this week, because that would be the way I would want to play this. If not,
Why not just play Jamal Williams at 6,100 then?
yeah, I guess you could do that. Historically, he's had pretty good correlation with Rodgers. But I guess as a starting running back, he's probably in a bit of a different role. And I don't know. You think like typically QB, RB, wide receiver isn't like stack people look towards, but it definitely got there last week. Between Bernard and Williams, with their quarterbacks and kind of receivers hitting, granted at super low prices. you think people will go back to Rodgers, Williams, Adams? It's not really something I would like to do. So maybe going just Williams.
Well,
Give
I think last week it was more likely because Jamal Williams was 4,000.
yeah, right.
Like that. I mean that. Like how? What if he puts up 20 points? Like you're beautiful at 4,000. If you
Sure.
put up 20 points at 6,100, you're not beautiful anymore.
Yeah, no,
Right? Your skinny stacks aren't at the strip club anymore.
I mean, any interest in? I know we were intrigued by MVS last week, but he just like you said, I mean, is just running wind sprints out there and uh, not getting any looks, not converting the looks he's getting. Tanyan has been pretty useless since Adams returned. Like, there's just not that much on the Green Bay side.
Yeah, I'm more likely if people are going towards this game. Like it's a highly This is one of those highly correlated games that if this game goes off, there's only a few people that it could happen with. So like, why am I playing it as one-offs if I'm going to do it? So like, I mean, it may sound weird to me. I did it last week, and of course, the game that went off, that it's quite possible I X out Devontae Adams from my entire play. Like I just like, what's the point? Like if he puts up a median score, what do I get for 8,800? Right? Let's say he puts up a 27. But at 8,800, is that going to be necessary? Can I find those points elsewhere? And then if he puts up anything more than that, like I'm going to need other people in this game. I'm going to need the game stack, right? So that's why, like, I know it sounds weird, but I think it makes sense that if you're not stacking this game, that you're not playing Adams in your lineup.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Dalvin Cook. I mean, I think he could also be a decent leverage spot.
But you have to think that the whole game script goes the other way. Like for me, I find it hard to play Cook as a one-off, with the Packers being a 7-point favorite.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Right? I mean, it could happen. Like I'm not saying that maybe the Vikings come in and rout the Packers. It could happen, but I think that's the game script that you need for the Cook one-off. Because if you don't get that, you're going to need Cook and Adams. You're going to need Cook. You're going to need a lot more of this game. If Cook goes off for 24, 142, and 3 touchdowns, like Devontae Adams is probably sitting there with 16 receptions, 180 yards, and a touchdown, and you're gonna want the Rodgers Adams stack.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, let's go to the final game that has a 50-point total, and I don't know, Stuart. I don't know if we're gonna agree on this. It's my favorite game on the slate. I don't like the silence. The silence means that I'm going down a rabbit hole.
I legitimately don't know what game it is.
Oh, okay, so good. So I'll just surprise you. Okay, it's opened at 51. It's now a 50 total. The Indianapolis Colts at the Detroit Lions. The Colts are 26.25 implied total. The Lions are 23.75 implied total. It's a 2.5-point spread. If we take a look at this game, if I bring it up on Lineup HQ, the only owned piece in this game currently to our ownership projections is Jonathan Taylor at 6,600. Everything else is under 10%. We have Galladay at 7.9%. These are obviously just initial projections. Marvin Jones at 5%. We got the T.Y. Hilton, Marcus Johnson, Zach Pascal. We got Hawkinson. All these guys in single-digit owned. I don't want to sound like Cardi, but it's the only dome game on the slate. Okay? And we have like 4 games that have weather problems. I know these teams that if they had their choice, they would run the ball all the time. But Rivers, no one likes to play him. They think he's done. He put up 370 yards the other game. These receivers are just so cheap. I mean, you have to get the right ones. But if you get the less likely game script that the Colts get up by 2 touchdowns and the Lions Stafford actually has to pass 40 times, or vice versa, or it's just, a couple of broken plays open up this game. It's on the fast track. It's cheap. I'm assuming you're going to tell me that based on your top stack probabilities that this game is not high, but it can't be that low.
No, Indianapolis is, they're kind of in the mix. I mean, we have them at 5.3% chance of scoring the most points. Just below Cleveland, just above San Francisco, above other teams like L.A., Baltimore, Las Vegas, Cincinnati. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm also kind of interested more in the Indianapolis side than Detroit. I mean, that Indianapolis side is just super cheap. If Taylor's going to be popular, I think there's pretty good leverage to be had. By getting some of those Indianapolis pass throwers and pass catchers. I have concerns about trying to stack up the Detroit side. They're expensive, relatively, compared to kind of the likelihood that they score the most points. Um, I guess if you're saying ownership projection is low, that does ease one of my concerns with the Detroit side, and that Stafford and Galladay are fairly popular, at least for kind of the probability we have of scoring the most points, but perhaps that will come down. As we've discussed before, concerns about Hawkinson's ceiling. That to me would be the guy. If I were going to try to stack the Detroit side, Stafford, Galladay, Hawkinson's kind of the natural play for correlation purposes. Yeah, I mean, Indianapolis, kind of similar to Cleveland. There are some concerns about the ceiling of these players, but for the price point, kind of that small ceiling is stomachable. More manageable, I think. And it's also like we've discussed. I'm not sure that we'd consider playing this game last week when there's half a dozen games approaching 55 totals, but like there's not that this week, and some of these games that we might not normally consider on a previous week could be in play. So what I mean, God, I really don't like the idea of rostering Hilton. I mean, would you go like Pascal and Marcus Johnson?
What's wrong with Hilton? Why? What's wrong? What's wrong with him? He got 10 targets 2 games ago. He got 9 in the first game. He's getting 5. It's not like we're not thinking of T.Y. Hilton when he's 6,000 like he used to be. He's cheap now. He's 4,900. He's still getting red zone targets.
Mhm.
So so why why do I want to play Zach Pascal over him? Just play T.Y. Hilton. And then same thing on the other side is like, who says you have to play like a double stack with Hawkinson? You could play Danny Amendola at 3,300 because we're going to see some of these 3K receivers being owned, and who knows? He's currently projected as 2.9% owned, and if he's correlated with the stack, like I'd much rather play Danny Amendola correlated with this lineup than play a skinny stack with Galladay and then play Denzel Mims as a one-off. What would be the point of that? Well, I'll just take the guy that's in that price range that correlates with my quarterback more than that, or the game if I'm playing the river side of it. Because you could even 3+2 this if you want, with Trey Burton sitting there at tight end. We didn't talk about him. He's 3,500. So you get to fill, tight end tends to be a wasteland. Maybe 10 points out of Trey Burton is good enough for you in the tight end slot, especially when maybe people going to play Harrison Bryant. Like, why can't I play Rivers, Burton, Hilton, and Johnson at 3,000, and then run it back with Galladay and Marvin Jones? Well, I know the reason why I can't do it, because it's a really horrible idea. But I mean, it sounds like vomit. That's why I look at this game. This is the vomit stack game, and
Yeah.
this year with the high totals, it's kind of hard. I've been trying every week to be like, where can I find a vomit stack? And it's like, there's no point in playing a vomit stack. All the totals are high. Just play skinny stacks so you can jam in wide receivers. We don't have to jam in wide receivers on the slate, so bring on the vomit stacks.
Yeah, no, this could be a good spot. Do have concerns. I mean, I typically don't like, I feel like Jones, Galladay, Godwin, Evans, Jefferson, Thielen are kind of becoming part of this group of like wide receivers 1 and 2 that I try to avoid playing together. The correlation suggests that there's not, high likelihood of both Galladay and Jones going off together. But I
But you never know. Well, Jones is also 4,200 now. He used to be 5,500, so maybe that kind of mitigates the fact a little. I'm trying to find any reason to waste more money playing Marvin Jones Jr.
he wasn't terrible last week. He had his best game of the season, I think.
Yeah, but
And
13 points ain't going to win me anything. Get
no,
out of here.
it's just best game.
Well, yeah, well, it's looking up.
Down.
Okay, so those are all the 50 total games. So now we got to throw everyone in the rest of the bucket of games that if you wanted to bring up. Obviously, we need to bring up the Chiefs because it's a 49 total game, but like nearly all the points are for the Chiefs. I've never seen a spread in the NFL that a team is a 19.5 point favorite. They have the highest chance in your model of scoring the most points. Well, obviously, but how do you play this game? Like how do you do this where they hit a ceiling? Like do you just play with no Jets? Do you play it with Jets? Do you play the running? Because now we have Levy and Bell. Obviously, I have to mention revenge game, right? You have to on any of these DFS shows. You have to mention the revenge games. It's required by contract, I believe. That like if they're going to split carries, CEH and Bell, as much as they did last week, and they're going to be out most likely to a 2-3 touchdown lead. Like what do I play? Do I just play just naked, like a no bring back Mahomes, Kelsey, or Mahomes Hill or something, and just hope that like yeah, I guess Mahomes throws for 4 touchdowns and 350 yards in like 3 quarters.
Yeah. I don't know who we had who were the Jets playing recently where they were just completely off
They
the
just played
board.
the Bills.
Bills, yeah. I mean, I do think.
Yeah, but the Bills are overrated. The Bills, I mean, I could fine. The Bills kicked a whole bunch of field goals and beat the Jets, but to me, if the Jets keep this game competitive, it's a low scoring game. So like how does this game, like if I'm going to run it back with Jets, oh yes, it's a shootout. Kansas City 38, Jets 27. Like, do I see the Jets scoring 27 points ever?
Not really. And Kansas City, I think, is a tough defense for them to do it against. I was more just trying to kind of compare like relative. I don't know, like comparing like how likely Kansas City versus Buffalo is to like continue to throw while up big. I mean, I don't know. Mahomes it's just like Kansas City side is fairly expensive, such that like I think they could kind of rush out to a big lead and kind of get to value, by halftime, but have a hard time at their price point, feeling that they have a good chance of just like massively exceeding value.
Yeah, I take a look at Mahomes at 8,100 on DraftKings, and I think I'm more likely if I'm not willing to play a Jet as a run back. If I roster Patrick Mahomes, I have to think that the Jets stay in it enough.
Yeah.
So I would have to run it back with the Jets. So I could totally see if I take a look at ownership on Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey are coming in currently around 10% owned. 6,700, 6,600. 6,600, obviously, for Kelsey at a weak tight end position. So if Kelsey gets 20 points, he could beat TE1 amongst he could have the highest score at tight end. So there's value to that. Like, what's wrong with just playing Hill or Kelsey as a one-off and just not even worrying about having any Jet in your lineup?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good way to go for it. And like also, I mean, why can't we go with one of the Kansas City running backs? I think they're what are you guys projecting for them ownership wise? I can't imagine they'll be super popular as there's kind of a perceived committee there. But I mean,
Now we have Lev Bell actually currently projected at 8% at 4,600. CEH 6,500 at 3%. But obviously now CEH, if they're going to split work, CEH is overpriced.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to play Le'Veon Bell at 4,600 and 8% owned? I mean, There are other running backs that are maybe not that cheap, but close to cheap, that are lower projected owned, that are starter running backs that I could play in low total games, sure, but who cares?
Yeah.
I was shocked when I saw this also. 8%. It probably is going to go down. No, how many people are this? Am I missing something? Did I miss some analysis here that Le'Veon Bell at 4,600? Like, you played that second running back on the Chiefs on an 11-game slate at 4,600? Do we play Jamal Williams at 4,000 when Aaron Jones is starting? No. So, like, what's the difference to me? Like, that's how I look at it. It's like, what's the difference? If 2 weeks ago, and Aaron Jones was playing, and I said, it was a good play, Jamal Williams. And they go, why? Yeah, because he gets 40% of the work. It's like, well, who cares? It's a DFS slate. What ceiling is there in that? And now we're doing the same. Now that's essentially what this is with CH and Bell, right? Am I correct? Maybe I'm missing something.
No, that seems right to me. I mean, but like we do play Aaron Jones with Jamal Williams lurking at 6'2", 6'8", low 7. So why would that price be?
Well, I don't play him as often as you do. That's the reason why I don't play him as often.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but it's a matter of chalk versus not chalk. It's ownership. Like, I'll play Aaron Jones. He had a big game earlier this year that he was under-owned, and I was twice the field of him. Like, but when people are touting Aaron Jones because of a good matchup and he ends up 18, 20% owned, that's when I'm gone. That's the same thing for Derrick Henry, right? I mean, it's the same type of concept of very wide range of outcomes, very barbell type of, like, they could do really great or really bad. So you want to take them when they're low owned and not when they're high owned. But do you see any other games on the schedule? Because now we're getting down past that game, the 46s, 44s, 41s even. Because we have Keenan Allen, who's going to be chalky in the Chargers game. We're going to see Kamara ownership probably in the Saints game. But from a game stack perspective, I mean, the lower total games, does any of them stand out as having a decent enough shot in comparison?
Yeah, not really. I mean, those guys you mentioned are like good individual plays, but a pretty low likelihood. I don't know. I'm curious. Like, I don't really watch a ton of college football. Like, what do you make of Tua? I mean, Los Angeles has.
What do
A,
you're asking me about football?
okay, well,
You just said you. I don't watch a lot of college football, so I'm going to ask the guy that barely watches football in general.
fair.
I don't even know what Tua looks like.
He's
Yeah,
left.
I only had to learn this week that he runs the ball. Apparently, he's a rushing type of quarterback, and that's why people on shows are saying how much is he going to rush the ball? But to me, I love Gaskin, so like that's a question that I want answered because we don't know how this Dolphins offense is going to necessarily run because we haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, I'm not interested in Miami side at all. I'm just kind of. I do think Los Angeles is interesting. They're priced. I think they're pretty expensive. I think relative to top point probability in my opinion. But
I could see making a secondary correlation. Like, I'm looking into like a correlation of like Gaskin and Cup.
yeah.
Like, to do that type of thing. Maybe I stay away. I mean, I don't know. Who knows with Sean McVay with the running backs?
Yeah.
5,900 for Darrell Henderson. I mean, anything could happen there, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, see, like I'd rather play Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 62 than, try to, play pick'em with Los Angeles running backs.
You know what I want had to happen? This is another game. Yeah. I'm gonna die on this hill. I'm gonna keep on playing this guy until he wins me money. If Allen Robinson gets ruled out, okay, because he's in concussion protocol. What that's going to do is condense ownership, and maybe people will play Mooney or Anthony Miller, and maybe obviously this is a win game also because they're playing outside in Chicago. This isn't in the dome in New Orleans. Kamara is going to be owned, and Kamara may be more owned with Thomas out because now they figure, well, Breeze is a noodle arm as it is, and now in the wind, he can't throw the ball more than 3 yards, and who's there 3 yards from him? Kamara. So that's a running back spot. Mooney and Miller and those guys are wide receiver spots. So who's the best leverage play at 5,900? Just with no Allen Robinson, maybe David Montgomery gets like 8-9 targets out of the backfield. And I'll
Yeah.
just do this to myself. I'll put David Montgomery and Marvin Jones in the same lineup and then just watch my money burn like it normally does.
Yeah, that's I mean a true like one-off type play. But I mean, yeah, if Robinson's
4% owned. He says he has way more than a 4% likelihood at 5,900 at getting 25 points.
yeah, um,
Okay, you questioned that. 20 points. Can I? Well, I'll make the bidding go down lower. I'm bidding lower.
I could be more into it for like, if Montgomery was just cheaper. I mean, that game just has an insanely low total. Or Chicago is like the only team they have a better chance of scoring the most points on the slate then is New York Jets. I mean, they're like less than 1% chance. But that, I mean, again, you're talking about playing a single guy, so I know it's not like you need to have a slate breaking type team total for like one player to work. And you would expect you know target share to be pretty condensed if Robinson's out. I mean, that's a pretty huge.
Right? It's a leverage play. Like if I would have told you that I'm looking down and like looking at the Patriots Bills game that has the lowest total on the board at 41.5 and saying, well, I think it's fine. Why don't I play James White and Stephon Diggs or something at their prices? And yeah, I'd say that I'd be nuts to do that because they don't correlate. They don't negatively correlate with anyone that has any ownership. Like no one in that game is going to be owned. So like I'm not. What am I gaining other than like, well, they're lower owned and that's about it. It's just that when I see Kamara being owned and potentially cheap Bears receivers, possibly. I don't know. Maybe Allen Robinson's out and no one cares. And they go, I can't play any Bears anyway. Okay, that's fine. So that's really what I'm looking for. Like in any of these games, I look at the Steelers Ravens game. Like that's an interesting game that two teams that have perceived good defenses. I mean, because they are good defenses. But are people going to be willing to because normally we don't see the Ravens because this total came down 3 points. The Ravens at like a 24.5 implied. The Steelers at 21.25 implied. And their prices aren't like ridiculous or anything, but also their totals aren't all that ridiculous. I see this game being under-owned, but like you said, with the Las Vegas Browns game, do you see a ceiling here?
Yeah, not really. I mean, the Ravens are a team that I do like to try to stack up a decent bit for correlation reasons, but yeah, the prices come down a bit, but not a ton. And yeah, I mean, they're just like I like playing Brown, Andrews, Jackson, or some two or three kind of combination of that when they're a 10% or even like 8% chance of scoring the most points on the slate. We have them at 3.8%. Pittsburgh down at 1.3. It's just like under different conditions, this game could be, or that Baltimore side could be interesting, but the conditions we have this week are making it not too compelling of a side to really load up on. So yeah, I got nothing else. I mean, I think we touched on the interesting games. Obviously Seattle, San Francisco up top. Tennessee, Cincinnati, I think intriguing, and some of these potentially weather impacted games that have some pieces there, have some intrigue. Kind of just have to wait on weather. I don't know. You got anything else or?
No, well, I wanted to mention because we've been chatting on the side, trying to solve some problems that you guys at Advanced Sports Analytics have a correlation tool for player to player, and if people want to go there and subscribe and check it out, explain exactly what that does.
Yeah, I mean, so I think people, who are kind of following, content and stuff are, familiar with correlations between positions. And I think there's kind of well-known and well-established, positional correlation, wide receiver one with quarterback, running back with defense. But like, we feel that, you know, players are unique enough, I guess, or they differentiate from one another on positional level, where it's important to look at player correlations at a player level. Like how does running back correlate with opposing receivers? Well, Josh Jacobs is going to correlate with opposing receivers far differently than Austin Eckler would correlate with opposing receivers. So we have a tool where you can search correlation between players on the same team, view the sample size, how many games have those two players played together, as well as correlation across, for like cross game correlation. So you can look at how I don't know, Darren Waller correlates with opposing quarterbacks, or the cumulative fantasy points scored by the entire offense that opposes him on a week by week basis. I think a really useful way to kind of plan, how you want to build your stacks. You know, Obviously trying to stack around positive correlation, also super useful for identifying good leverage spots, finding guys who negatively correlate with one another. Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams have, a reasonable negative correlation. So that's a spot where, you feel like getting one or the other has pretty strong leverage against the alternative. I think it's a super useful tool. Check it out. I actually really like using it for showdown slates where, you are kind of thinking about a universe of players in a vacuum. So, if you're going to play, I think we actually have a pretty fun showdown slate tonight. I'll probably be looking at some of those correlation features ahead of Thursday. Yeah, we also have a Substack that we recently started last week. Be launching every Friday relating to the main slate, and every Sunday after lock relating to the Sunday night and Monday night slates. You can check it out. Like, a lot of the notes that I bring into the show with some of these metrics that we talk about will be presented in full on the Substack article for all games. So if you're interested in kind of diving into some of the metrics that we've discussed for all of the games, that could be a good.
So what's the Substack address?
Yeah, it's just advancedsportsanalytics.substack.com.
Okay.
You can also follow us on Twitter, and we have information regarding it and linking off. So yeah, feel free to check it out.
So check that out. And you could always check out Rotogrinders Premium, Core 4 Premium, all the 4 core sports, NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA. Sign up, rotogrinders.com/media/ASA, or the link that's in the description. You get $5 off your first month. So for Stuart Gibson, I'm Jordan Cooper. And that has been the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on rotogrinders.com.